Hello and welcome. My name is Heitor Faroni. I'm a Director of Solutions Marketing. Today I'm going to talk about some important considerations for what we call tomorrow's digital business. We're going to discuss about two trends, mobility and IoT, and why we believe they are going to shape the way your company is going to do business in the future. First, let's look at some of the growing trends. The first one I want to discuss is mobility. According to IDC, we expect to ship 1.5 billion smartphones in 2016, showing continuous growth compared to last year. We also expect that the number of apps downloads is going to grow substantially and reach 270 billion downloads per year by 2017. More and more, people are using this device to conduct their daily activities. And specifically in the enterprise environment, it is expected that the number of enterprise mobile apps are going to quadruple by 2018. Another interesting point is that 60% of these apps are going to be created with no PC antecedent. That means they were originally created to be used on a mobile device. These indicators show that mobility continues to be strong, and corporations are embracing what we call the mobile mind shift, and consequently transforming the way they do business, the way they interface, and the way they collaborate with these devices. The other important trend is Internet of Things or IoT. This one is just starting. It is not as mature as mobility, but according to Gartner, they expect an explosive growth of IoT endpoints. And by 2020, we should have about 21 billion units connected. Of course, not all of them are going to be used in the enterprise environment. Many will be used in the consumer world, but a large percentage is going into corporations. Just to give you an idea, one sector of IoT, which is industrial IoT, is by itself a 1.4 billion market and is growing more than 10% per year. Another example that we give here is smart eyewear. These are devices that started in the consumer world, but by 2019, IDC expect that 83% of the 22 million smart eyewear devices to be shipped will go to enterprise use cases. These are strong indicators that this is another trend growing considerably. We believe that tomorrow's digital business, or the future of many corporations, are going to be shaped by the two trends of mobility and IoT. Each one has its own requirements. Mobility asks for connectivity anywhere. We're going to see a lot of Wi-Fi connectivity, broad application diversity, multiple devices per person, including BYOD. We're going to require faster response time because our daily activities more and more are going to depend on the mobile devices. And IT has to think beyond just the employees. They need to support the customers, contractors, and visitors. Think about the retail stores. When you go there, in many cases, you expect to have Wi-Fi connectivity. IoT, on the other side, comes from a different angle. Here, the push is coming from the line of business, from the business units. They see specific benefits, either to their productivity or to the way they interact with their customers. Whatever the reason is, they are coming to IT asking to support these devices, to connect them, and to make sure they operate efficiently. We are going to see a request for more devices to be connected, much more than we have today. And many of these devices are going to drive the power from the network. So we should see an increase in PoE. Of course, we don't expect all the devices to use Ethernet or Wi-Fi to be connected. Some will use other technologies like Zigbee or Z-Wave. But even on that cases, there is typically a gateway that aggregates these devices and also converts it to either Ethernet or Wi-Fi. We also see that IT have to support beyond what we call the carpeted areas. In many cases, it is going to go to the industrial floor, outdoors, really anywhere, expanding the areas that IT has to cover. Obviously, these two trends are going to see or to have a direct impact in the network infrastructure. We're going to need a higher resiliency, a tighter security. Think about how some of these IoT devices are clueless about security. One example in the consumer world are some of these cameras that parents install in their house to monitor their babies. And burglars hack into these systems to know everything that is happening inside the house. We also need to provide more wireless coverage, higher performance, low latency. For instance, when you address industrial IoT, you are in many cases controlling very expensive machines. They may have specific latency requirements, from the time a sensor detects an anomaly to the time an actuator has to perform a certain function. Suppose, for instance, the max latency have to be 20 milliseconds. What happens if out of a sudden the network takes 40 milliseconds? This could be the difference between life and death, or the fact that a multi-million-dollar machine gets damaged. We will have to think about a new concept called IoT traffic containment, where you create a segregated and isolated environment, where you can enforce security, where you can protect that traffic and ensure a certain QoS so these IoT devices and the application that control them can run in an optimum way. Overall, we expect to have an even higher dependency on the network. When I say that business in the future are going to be shaped by these technologies, I want you to take this really into deep consideration, really seriously. I added here some examples of what happened to certain industry due to the growth in mobility. You probably heard about Uber and how that is disrupting the way the taxi industry operates. Another example is WhatsApp, an application that pretty much gives you SMS and calls free of charge. Apps like this transform the way carriers charge you. If you remember in the past, the revenue was coming mainly from voice and from SMS. Now they totally changed their model to charge on data connectivity. Same thing on Waze for the GPS companies, or on Spotify, changing or affecting the music industry, and many other examples. Most of the ones I mentioned are related to mobility, but IoT is also starting to show. You probably heard about Google, the self-drive car, or some connected vehicles. These are going to cause major changes in the automotive industry. So you really need to take this into consideration. You could be an early adopter, be informed and prepared, and possibly differentiate your company, or become a lagger and perhaps face some market share losses to your competitors. Since IoT is a new subject to many of us, I want to take a few minutes to provide some basic concepts. What these devices have in common? What's happening nowadays is that a variety of devices are becoming connected, are becoming intelligent. They are able to communicate over IP, from surveillance cameras to door lockers to ventilation and air conditioning systems to point of sales and even sprinklers, believe it or not. So there is a variety of devices already connected, and this is only going to grow even more. As we start discussing about IoT, I want to give you some terminology and a better understanding of, let's say, the universe of IoT. And I took the liberty here to borrow a slide from Gartner, where they talk about end-to-end IoT solutions and the terminology they use. First, we have IoT endpoints, which are these devices we previously described with an ability to connect and exchange data with an IoT platform. An IoT platform can be as simple as an application running in the data center that manages and controls these devices, or it could be an appliance installed somewhere, or even it could be a much more sophisticated system as it is depicted in this diagram. It could have all the aggregation and device management, all the data collection, the analytics, the orchestration between the multiple devices, and APIs to interface with other systems. They could talk to your ERP, your CRM system, and it could go beyond to interface with other corporations and to store data in the cloud. So the universe of IoT is going to grow more and more as the applications and the use cases become more sophisticated. One thing that is key to understand is that IoT always comes with a clear business outcome. The reason people invest in that technology is either to achieve a better productivity, to improve a process, etc. Whatever it is, it produces a clear business benefit. And in this universe of IoT, ALE plays a specific role, which is the communication part. In other words, the infrastructure so these IoT endpoints can talk to the IoT platform in an optimal way. Another interesting point that comes up when you talk about IoT is security. I bet many of you have seen movies where the burglar comes in through the air conditioning system. Well, I can tell you that in modern days this actually can be still true, but in a different way. Nowadays, hackers go through an IoT system, for instance the ventilation air conditioning system, and explore some vulnerabilities. From there, they can reach the point of sales and steal valuable customer information, like their stored information including social security number, which is the national ID here in the US, and their credit card numbers. And if you think this is just fiction, it actually happened at one of the major retail stores chains here in the US called Target. In their case, millions of credit card numbers were stolen. So security is of course an important aspect to be taken into consideration and get prepared. So this concludes our introduction to IoT, and I invite you to watch the following webinar where we are going to discuss what kind of solutions we have to offer, what network foundations you need to provide in order to support both mobility and IoT. And this is the foundation for what we call tomorrow's digital business, really connecting people, applications, and things anywhere in a simple, secure, and reliable manner. Thanks for attending the webinar.